Section 4. You'll hear a talk on the subject of green buildings and skyscrapers. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40. Good morning, everyone. Today I am here to talk about the construction of green buildings. Given the current state of the global environment, new types of architecture, design and construction techniques are absolutely necessary. My brief lecture today will cover two topics: what qualifies a building to receive a green certification, and also how widespread such sustainable buildings currently are. There is a growing demand for so-called green buildings. Government agencies and corporations around the world understand that sustainable workplaces are quite cost-effective in the long run. Though initial outlays for construction are usually more expensive, the savings in maintenance and energy costs make up for it. Here at the Ministry of Environmental Stewardship, we have created a detailed set of requirements that a building must pass in order to be certified as green. For buildings that have already been constructed, we offer two levels of certification, bronze and silver, depending on the number of guidelines implemented. These include reducing or recycling waste products, as well as installing efficient heating and cooling systems. For a gold certification, a building must have had sustainable and environmentally friendly practices from the beginning of its construction. Measures such as using local materials, wood grown from well-managed forests, or reducing the use of toxic chemicals all contribute toward this prestigious distinction. It's pleasing to see how mainstream going green is now. Here at the Ministry, however, we know and understand that this cannot be just some passing fad. We created these guidelines so that institutions could not merely greenwash their buildings, claiming that they are environmentally friendly when in fact they aren't. I would now like to talk about some buildings that have received these special certifications. In the 60s, there was a great number of public housing projects built. Over the years, many of them have fallen into gross disrepair. As part of an urban revitalization project, construction companies have consulted with ministry experts to make those council estates a greener and healthier place to live. At Cabrini Fields, lead pipes and lead paint were removed, improving the health of children living there. A system of rooftop and community gardens also helped residents to support themselves. It was one of the first buildings we awarded a bronze certification to. One building with a silver certification is the Milop Jewett Tower, built over a century ago and located in the downtown area. The insides of the building were completely scooped out, allowing the construction company to implement innovative new ways of saving energy. The utility bill of the entire building is now 40% down, only 60% of its previous level, despite rising energy costs. Lastly, I would like to talk about the latest building to receive a gold certification from the Ministry. Arcadia Arbours is a really great example of green engineering and construction. From the very beginning, the project heads made a really unique plan and held to it. Many of the Ministry's guidelines were followed, and we even got ideas for other ways to make buildings sustainable. The centerpiece of this skyscraper is a multi-story hanging garden that serves both an aesthetic and practical purpose. That is the end of Section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers. That is the end of the listening test. In the IELTS test, you would now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the listening answer sheet. Section 4. You will hear the first part of one lecture, in a series of lectures about environmental issues. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40. In this lecture series, we have been looking at the most pressing environmental issues that the world faces. One of those issues, global warming, has become very fashionable to talk about in the past decade. Though I'm not trying to diminish its importance as a problem, it must be understood that the effects of an increasingly warm planet will not be seen for many more decades. One problem affecting the lives of people right now is the scarcity of water. The need for fresh water will only increase as the world's population grows, especially in developing countries. In the future, changing weather patterns that come with global warming will only make the problem worse. People need water to drink, cook food, shower and wash clothes. Most of the planet is covered with water, but unfortunately only a tiny percentage of it is fit for human use. Of all the water in the world, less than 3% is fresh water. More than 2/3 of that remaining percentage is locked up in glaciers in Greenland, Antarctica and elsewhere, also unavailable for human use. The water vital for life comes from lakes, rivers, underground aquifers, rain and snow. This surface water, groundwater and precipitation is not disturbed equally across the Earth's surface. For example, Canada, which has about 0.5% of the world's people, contains about 10% of the world's readily available fresh water. Brazil makes up about 3% of the world's population, but within its borders contain nearly 12% of the world's freshwater resources. As the economies of developing countries grow, the need for fresh water also grows. One example of this has to do with the production of meat. In some countries, the demand for beef increases when people earn more money. However, raising cattle is incredibly water-intensive, requiring about 15 tons of water for 1 kilogram of grain-fed beef. The scarcity of water has a direct impact on human life. When people are forced to walk many kilometers to the nearest source of fresh water, it may take hours away from their day. This, in turn, takes time away from school or from other productive work that helps the general economy. A number of solutions have been proposed to deal with the scarcity of water. Some of them are technological, like the construction of desalination plants. These plants convert brackish salty seawater into water fit for human use. They are very expensive to operate and maintain, though, and cannot meet the world's growing demand for water. Other kinds of solutions involve only a little technology or involve modifying individual people's habits. In a rural part of India, a village facing water shortage started collecting rainwater. A simple system allowed them to save water that fell over a large area and use it during dry periods. In the suburbs that surround the cities of developed countries, house owners are using xeriscaping techniques. The main purpose of xeriscaping, unlike traditional landscaping, is to not use supplemental irrigation. This requires the use of plants, shrubs and trees that are appropriate for the climate. In dry areas, this means planting ones that use less water. In the future, many countries will need to use a variety of these techniques in order to provide enough water for their citizens. Water security will be of utmost importance to those governments, especially in areas that are politically unstable. That is the end of Section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers. That is the end of the listening test. In the IELTS test, you would now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the listening answer sheet. Section 4. You will hear a student representative explaining the views of the student body about how a large donation to the school should be spent. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for asking the student body about the recent large donation to our school and what it should be spent on. Also, thank you to the rest of the Board of Trustees for letting us have some say over how to improve our university. We know that sometimes students and administration have different priorities regarding the development of the school, but we hope you sincerely consider some of the ideas that are proposed. When the estate of Paul A. Modib announced that he had left over $50 million to the school, the whole community was quite ecstatic and very grateful for such a generous gift. Since the initial euphoria has passed, though, we have all realized that some tough decisions have to be made. The donation can help fund new projects for the school or improve existing facilities and programs. But there is not enough money to pay for every single idea. That is why the University Senate, through an online survey, asked the student body what ideas they thought were best. The first part of this survey consisted of an open question. Students could list any number of different ideas. The results were then compiled in order to do a second online survey. Ideas that were totally impossible, or those that were jokes, were taken out. All the ideas that consistently came up again and again were put to a vote. We found that the 4 things that came up the most were all pretty different. I will mention them briefly before going over the pros and cons of each of them. In the first part of the survey, we saw over and over again that students wanted to improve the residential dormitories, completely redo the campus dining system, remodel the athletics building, and finally increase funding for research projects and grants, especially for those in science. Obviously, there is not enough money from the donation to pay for all those ideas, so we have to prioritize. The ideas that got the most votes were improving the residential dormitories and completely redoing the campus dining system. They both got 30% and 28% respectively of students saying that was what most of the money should be spent on. Many of the dorm facilities are quite old and definitely need some repair, particularly the shared bathrooms. Also, students have been complaining for a while that there is not an adequate number of dining facilities on campus, and that the quality of the food at existing places is low. Spending most of the donation in these areas would definitely improve the quality of life on campus. However, a significant minority of the student population, about 40%, does not live on campus. They commute from their homes elsewhere and therefore would not benefit from those improvements. 25% of students thought improving the athletics building was the best use of the money, and 17% voted for giving money to research projects for science. There are many people who are attracted to our university because of our athletics programs, so improving the building would improve the reputation of the university. Only a small percentage of students actually ever use the athletics building, however. Though it received the fewest votes, giving money to university research projects has great potential. Any new patents that come about because of that research can possibly earn the school lots of money. That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers.